Let's talk about compassion and, more importantly, compassion for ourselves. Why is it that we beat ourselves up time and time again? It's not doing us any good. And more importantly, it's probably holding us back. This is what we're going to dive into today as we talk with expert Julia Nepini. She is a coach that really dives in to helping us live and work in alignment and learning how to develop compassion for ourselves. I'm Clara Capano, and this is Women Winning Their Way. Well, Julius, thank you so much for being here today. I am so excited because we're going to be diving into talking about not only the power of creating success on our terms, but tying it back to, again, having compassion for ourselves. So, Julia, do me a favor and kind of introduce yourself to us because you are not only a fellow podcaster, but you also are a coach and you really focus on the idea of being the compassionate coach. So tell us a little bit about you.
All right. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. Love this topic. So, I am a clinical and forensic social worker who owns a counseling practice and a consulting business. And so, leadership is something that I have just embraced and leaned into and enjoy it, but it has been very challenging. And so, the podcast was really an opportunity for me to share my value system and try to find other professionals who are operating within theirs and still achieving success and finding a way to do that is in alignment with that value
Absolutely.
system.
And so many times I think, in our drive, especially when we're starting our business, it is so easy to get out of alignment. We want to serve more people. Sometimes we're trying to figure out, what our area is. Staying in our lane, and it's so easy to get out of alignment. Can you think about a time even for yourself where maybe you found yourself getting out of alignment and how that impacted you in your growth?
The biggest one for me is becoming a business owner and having to take off that cap of clinician and put on the cap of owner and dealing with a lot of my money issues. So I'm not somebody who is driven by money. It's not anything that's going to incentivize me. That's just how I am
Mhm.
personally. But it's essential. If you're going to be successful in business, you need to make a profit. And especially if you're going to employ other people and be responsible for them in that capacity, you have to
Mhm.
have systems in place that assure that you're going to have longevity. And so that was the first time that there was really this dissonance between my value system and realizing that you can still make a profit, but operate from a place of integrity, use that moral compass, maintain compassion, be empathetic. So that was one for sure.
Yeah. So when you find that, you're working with people who are not in alignment, what are some signs that you see from people who are not acting in alignment? What are some things
Mhm.
maybe that we should pay attention to that could be red flags that maybe we're
Mhm.
getting out of alignment?
Well, I think a lot of it is personal dissatisfaction. So that's the first key. If you are not ultimately happy with where you're at in your life or the choices that you're making, or you find yourself maybe pointing the finger at a lot of other people, and there's that external blame instead of really being able to
Mhm.
look within ourselves, I think that's a first indication for sure.
Yeah.
But then I think a lot of it is just when we're making a decision and we might be struggling to decide what direction to head. That's such a great opportunity to come back to what we're truly feeling in our gut, thinking it through, being aware of what we feel. And a lot of times having a sounding board can be really
Mhm.
helpful to get some of that stuff out and processed.
Yeah. I had an example of that for me just, not that long ago where I was offered an opportunity to be a part of a group. And I loved the people in the group. I loved their vision. I definitely wanted to find a way to work with them. But every time we got off a call where we were talking about the structuring of what we were going to do, I just felt icky. I was just like, I don't know. I don't know. And I really started to, again, lean into, my intuition of what is the holdup? Because again, I love these people. I believe in them. but it wasn't really going to be what I knew. It was going to take me away from what I needed to focus on and
Yeah.
end up being more of a distraction. And as hard as it was to bow out,
Mhm.
I knew it was what I needed to do. And
Yeah.
so I think you're absolutely right. We really have to start to listen to ourselves.
Mhm.
So, what are some strategies? If you find yourself that you've started working with the wrong people, that you've started acting out of alignment, how can you graciously and professionally get back into alignment?
So I think the stronger you are in your awareness of what your value system is, and the more you practice saying no to the things that don't resonate and yes to the things that do, the easier that it's going to be. But when it's challenging, I think the key is really to hone in on what is driving that yes in you. Like you said,
Mhm,
bowing out of that meeting was hard. I think it's really tapping into why is that hard for you? Is it this people pleasing, not wanting to let people down? Not wanting to upset anyone, whatever that may be. And I think addressing that, and what I've learned is that the people in your life that truly care about you are going to support you in your no because they want you to do things that are in alignment, because
mhm.
that's how you're going to show up as the best version of yourself for the things you say yes to.
I love that. I think that's really important. I really hope that people heard that is again the right people when you tell them this isn't, going to be where I need to be right now. The right people are going to be like proud of you for saying no
Yes.
and honor you for doing that. So again, I think that's a really great lesson.
Mhm.
I want to talk a little bit about this thing called compassion because I think that this resonates with so many of the people that are following because we are creating our businesses and so many times it becomes a labor of love.
Right.
And many of us are type A personalities, we are drivers, and we tend to be so good at being hard on ourselves. And it's that blessing and the curse. It's in many ways again that driving force to allow us to seek out greatness.
Mhm.
But man, if I could get paid for beating myself up, I would be a billionaire by now. Why is it so hard for us to be kind for ourselves? And why is it so important to develop compassion for what we
Mm.
do?
So a lot of this, I'm going to put my therapist hat on, I think
Mhm,
comes from early experiences, those key figures in our lives, and what message or narrative did we get from them as we were growing up and coming home with either a good grade or a bad grade, or if we're playing on a sports team, how our coach is responding to, a good play versus missing the goal. So I think that's step one. I think another piece that factors in a lot is birth order and a lot of those early experiences with our peers, and then we throw into the ring our experiences in our jobs and how we are received and are we respected? How are we treated? And then I just think it's a snowball from there. So
mhm,
I think a lot of those messages are not necessarily rooted within us. It's almost this on repeat from earlier experiences and our interpretation of that and how we felt in those moments. So I think that can be really telling.
mhm. I want to tell me more about this birth order. I find this fascinating. Do you find
Oh,
that certain ones, and I know my sisters are going to be listening to this,
for
are there certain
sure.
birth orders that, are affected more by this? I'm
Mhm.
curious.
There are. So it's not this hard and fast, everybody fits into this dynamic, but this was actually my thesis in college. I was that fascinated. So, coming from a family of three, being the oldest and the only girl, I fell into that archetype of parentified, perfectionistic, really taking that like weight of the world and weight of the family on your shoulders. And that really developed me into who I have become professionally and personally. And so as I started researching that more and more, there really is this trend for there to be those traits in the firstborn, especially in a sibling group of three. And then we have the middle child who very oftentimes can be that scapegoat, rebel, trying to find their way. And then the youngest, a lot of times, can be a little bit more laid back. Usually the parents are at a different stage in their parenting journey at that point when the third comes. And so their approach to life and responsibility can be very different. There are other factors too,
For
but
sure. But I think what you said is again how, all these experiences again, if we were, to speak up in class when we were younger and that was either celebrated or not celebrated, that could impact how we're compassionate. I'm not sure if you're familiar. There's a passage that I share when I teach my ninja classes, and it's called Mastery. It's written by a gentleman named Stuart Emery. And
Mhm.
one of the things that he lays out in there is, again, developing compassion for ourselves as we are going after and searching after our own personal mastery. And one of the things that I talk about is the idea that so many times we also suffer from this thing called comparisonitis. We are so conditioned to compare ourselves to others. And I
Mhm.
think that that is a way of also not having compassion for ourselves, because we look at others and we judge ourselves by them.
Mhm.
Do you see that a lot? And how detrimental can that be in our growth as a business owner, as much as just a human being?
Sure. I see it every day of my life, multiple times a day. I think so much of that, especially in the business realm, can come from not only our efforts to put ourselves out there, we have to market, we need people to know the service that we offer and the work that we do. How do we set ourselves apart from other people? How do we bring our own unique attributes to the process to make somebody opt to go with us if we're in alignment and they're our ideal client versus someone else? But then can we throw social media into the mix? I mean, if you're going to have a web presence and you're going to be out there, you're going to be looking at other people's feeds and getting ideas. And then there's that natural human nature and tendency. Well, what is that person doing? What's working for them? They had an offering that sold out. They're making seven figures. Look at their following, look at their likes. I think it just feeds into these insecurities that we may already have. And now we have all this opportunity to view things that we would have no access to before, that a couple of years ago were not a thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Do you think
going
it's
into that and
really
having some.
causing do you think it, in many ways can hinder our growth? Do you think it's I mean, do you think looking at these things, drives us more? Or do you think it holds
Mhm.
us back more?
It can go either way. I think
Yeah.
so much of it has to do with our own level of self awareness and that ability to pause and reflect, check in with ourselves. When we feel something after seeing someone else or something else, taking that moment to realize what it stirs up within us. Can it be a catalyst for positive things? Absolutely. You want to surround yourself with people that are a few steps ahead of you in a process. You want to be inspired. You want to be motivated. You want to learn. But if you're coming at it from a low place already and you're not in the best mind space when you log in, it can also bring you down and you go down this rabbit hole of a thought spiral
Mhm,
potentially. You don't
mhm.
have that ability to pull yourself out. It can be really damaging.
Yeah. Okay. So, what are some techniques that we can use to develop more compassion for ourselves and to be kinder to ourselves?
So I personally have found the Enneagram extremely helpful. It's a personality test. There are 9 interconnected types, and we all have a primary type and then wings. And so for me personally, learning my number and reading those criteria and the motivations that drive me, but also the fears that are lingering there behind the scenes was groundbreaking for me. I
Mm.
felt seen and heard and understood in a way that I had not necessarily before. And then, of course, I was curious to learn everybody else's number in my personal and professional life. It's been so helpful with my team, but also with consulting clients. So when I start to work with someone, we're working with each other for a very brief period of time. It
Mhm.
expedites that process of getting to know one another and clues me into what will work. So I think that's a piece, knowing your motivations and knowing your fears, but also going a level deeper and exploring some of what contributed to why that is ultimately your number, and it comes back to early experiences. So
Yeah.
for me personally, I'm a 1. So 1 is a reformer perfectionist, and that comes from this parentification in childhood
Mm.
and learning that a way for me to be successful was following the rules, keeping
Ah.
quiet, not expressing my
Mhm.
needs, jumping in and helping other people. And so now that I'm aware of that, it doesn't put me in a box. It allows me to get out of that box and see a larger world view. So I think that's a good starting point.
Yeah, I think again that self-awareness is so great. One of the things I love to do too is because I can get in the spiral of I'm not accomplishing enough, because I can get so future oriented that I'm like I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet, that I forget about everything that I am accomplishing. So, for me, really trying at the end of each day to look at what did I accomplish?
Mhm.
So I'm big on gratitude practices, and I've talked about this before. Not only starting my morning off with what am I grateful for today, but ending the day with what are three great things that happened. At
Mhm.
the one of the things that I do each week when I plan my upcoming week, I always start it with what were my wins from last week. Because I think if we don't celebrate,
Mhm.
if we just wait until the end of the year, it's too far away. And I think that's another way to develop compassion for myself is to really have some markers of, oh, I am actually doing some cool things each and every day.
Yes, I couldn't agree with you more. We get more of what we pay attention to, and we're
Mhm.
hardwired to hone in on the negative, especially if there's a negative emotion attached to it. That's just self-preservation as a human. So if we are honing in and focusing on the good stuff, the positives, the accomplishments, and especially if you're writing that down or if you're
Mhm.
saving things like a thank you card or a text message from someone where they acknowledge something that you did that was impactful for them, then we go back and review it, we're literally changing the wiring in our brains.
Absolutely. So true. So true. So I really want to hear a little bit more about your journey. One of the things that we talk about on this show is breaking free from expectations, defying the standards that are out there. Has there been
Mm.
a time in your life where people were trying to put you in a box and you were like, nope, I'm kicking myself out of this box and carving forward on my own path?
Without question. So this all happened when I was pretty far into my career, had worked for several places. I was working at a hospital at the time and made the decision to start my own practice part-time. And it was that hierarchy of working within a system, and our job responsibilities and role were changing significantly. And of course, they don't ask you if you want to do these things. It's just these are the things that you're doing now, and there's not a pay increase and there's not any extra acknowledgement or time to complete these tasks. It's just this is what your day is going to look like now.
Mhm.
And so I had been working at a group practice on the side, seeing clients, and had been there for several years and was feeling like I was deserving of more of the reimbursement that was coming in because of several factors. And when that got denied between the two, it was like, I need to start my own thing. And so I feel like that's where this all shifted for me, starting my own business, going out on my own, taking that leap of faith, building my own confidence within myself that I could do it, and leaving that security and that comfort and those golden handcuffs of a salary and benefits and knowing what your paycheck is going to look like versus
Mhm.
having to rely on other people to show up for their therapy sessions and be committed to the
Mhm.
process and relying on insurance to pay you. So that was a huge turning point.
Yeah. It's so interesting that you say that because I went through so many of those on my journey. People would ask me, what do you miss, the management? And I'm like, I miss my corporate card. I miss my insurance plan. But what I found because I was very similar to you in that it was following the rules, again,
Mhm.
checking off the boxes and having that quote unquote safety and security. What I have found, and I would love to hear if you found the same thing, I
Mhm.
actually find more safety and security working for myself because I'll bet on myself all day long. Now, yes, there are certain times where my business is not thriving as much as it, has, but many
Mhm.
times again that comes back to me, was I doing what I
Yes.
needed to do or was I maybe being lazy and kind of fell
Mhm.
off my systems? But I find that there's more, safety and security when I focus on myself and do what I know I need to do.
I would agree wholeheartedly, but so much of that has been my own evolution as a woman,
Mhm.
mom, business owner, social worker, because I've built my self efficacy. So to me, that is my belief in my ability to handle whatever challenges come my way. And I've had enough examples now that I've had to come out on the other side and look back and learn and reflect. And it just builds up your confidence in navigating the world because there's always going to be unknown. There will always be challenges. And now I'm in a position where I have to navigate that for 20 plus people and help them in those times of challenge. And they look to me for answers and guidance. So, in a process to figure it out. And then obviously parenting as well. That's a
Mhm.
constant there. So, yeah, I think building
Yeah.
self-efficacy has been huge. So yes,
Yeah.
we will bet on ourselves. We know that if something needs to get done, that we know that we're going to stop at nothing to get that done. We're going to find a
Absolutely.
way.
And this ties back to something that you brought up earlier of the idea of, again, when you're comparing, make sure that you're also looking at the right type of people.
Mhm,
There is an analogy out there about a bucket of crabs and how if one crab is trying to crawl out of the bucket, the other crabs are going to pull it back in. And
mhm,
I find that many times when we share our dreams with people and we
mm,
tell people, oh, I'm going to leave the corporate job and I'm going to start my own thing, there are far more people out there that are going to try to dissuade you than
mhm,
encourage you. So make sure, again, you are seeking out advice from the right people because sometimes it's better to stay and ease into it. Sometimes it's better to leap and
mhm.
wait for the net. But again, this is where, again, you can't listen to everyone. You really have to, seek out the guidance and the advice from the right people.
Yeah, it's reminding me of something that I recently read that I'm probably going to botch, but it was something along the lines of no one that is in a place that's beyond you is going to be bringing you down or discouraging you. They're going to want you to come to their level. And so it's really important to know your audience and to really evaluate the source and where that could be coming from. And if they're not self aware, that's up to you to infer what could be going on there and not always take that on because it may not be your stuff.
Absolutely. Yes. I know Darren Hardy, who I follow, would always talk about, it's not my monkey. And, people are always trying to give you the monkey that's on their back and being able to say things such as, I'm sure you're real smart. You'll figure that out because you don't
Yeah.
want to take on their monkeys.
So true. I love that.
Oh my God. Well, Julia, I love talking with you. And before we get to the last question, I do
Mhm,
want to highlight you a little bit. We're going to put all of your information in the show notes because
mhm,
I know there's people out there. But again, you have a podcast. Tell us a little bit
mhm.
about your podcast and where they can find it.
Sure, it's called The Compassionate Climb, and it was really my pursuit in trying to have conversations with like-minded people that were entrepreneurs or work with entrepreneurs and are achieving success in their own right, but are doing it within their value system. And so we release new episodes every Friday, and stay tuned because hopefully we'll be having you on there.
I know. I love it. Before I ask you my last question, I have one other question.
Sure.
Values. I
Mhm.
don't know what it is, but so many times when this concept comes up about live within and act within your values,
Mhm.
so many people struggle with identifying their values. What
Mhm.
is a great resource that you can direct people
Mm.
to really start to learn and start to identify maybe what are their 5 or 10 core values? Because
Yes.
that really is a driving force. And so many people have a hard time identifying and again, really understanding what drives them.
Yeah, I think the first place to start is either value cards or going online and just reading through a list and picking the ones that resonate with you the most. And you can have an extensive list, and then you'll find that there are several that are in the same category. Which one really strikes you more? And I think the other piece is really thinking about key moments in your life and what was the driving force behind your decision. And if you're seeing patterns, you can usually weed it down to about five from the list that you generate.
Because I think this brings us all full circle because when you work by your values, that's how you're also going to assure that you're working in alignment, which is what
Yes,
we started the conversation with.
sure.
Yeah. So Julia, again, it's been so wonderful having you on the show. The last question I have for you is sitting where you are today, learning everything that you've learned, even though you're still growing. How do
Mhm.
you define success for yourself now?
Love this question. So, success for me is knowing your unique gifts and skills and what you bring to the world, discovering that and sharing it with as many people as possible.
Ah, so beautiful. Well, Julia, thank you again. I know there's going to be people out there that I want to follow you. So, again, remember everyone, follow her show, get her links in the comments. And, Julia, again, thank you for being such a beautiful guest.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, let's recap. Julia went over so many key items. Some of the things that I wrote down is, I love this idea of having compassion. It is so easy for us to go to the negative side. It is so easy for us to compare ourselves and to beat ourselves up. But you know what? That is not serving us. It doesn't mean don't challenge yourself. It doesn't mean don't reflect and pivot and adjust. All it means is be kind to yourself. Learn from these things, accept feedback from the right areas, and see how you can bring this in to allow yourself to grow into the best version of yourself. Another thing we talked about, living in alignment. It is so easy to get out of alignment. We like to help other people. We want to take on all the opportunities out there. But the reality is, and trust me, I've learned this too many times, not every opportunity is the right opportunity for us. So check yourself, get a gut check. Before you go in and do something, ask yourself, if I choose to do this new opportunity, what is it I have to say no to? Am I going to have to change who it is that I am? Am I not going to be able to show up authentically? Because when you act out of alignment, again, that is not going to serve you, and you're not going to be able to serve others. Check in on two things: what motivates you and what scares you. Those are the things that are going to help you to learn more about yourself. Lean into the things that motivate you. For me, it's not money. There was a time it was money, and that was great. But now it's about impact. So I use that to again help me with my checks and balances. Is this going to allow me to deliver the impact? When I wake up in the morning, how am I going to deliver impact today? And then what scares me? Some of the things that scare me, scares me. But you know what? I also have to learn that failure is part of growth. So again, what really scares me, it's not the failure, it's not being able to deliver that impact. So again, it brings it back in and starts to help me make higher quality decisions and make sure that I'm living at the highest level and, vibrating at that highest level so I can have true connections. And then again, one of the last things she talked about is believing in your ability. Make sure you know you are worthy. That's one of the things. I am the living your worth speaker because it's something that I didn't believe in for so many years. All of us have a voice, all of us have a reason to be here. So tap in and start to believe in the messages and in the value you bring. Because when you believe you are worthy, you start standing with more confidence, and that is how you are going to truly connect. So, thank you so much for being a part of our journey here at Women Winning Their Way. Remember to share these episodes, not only so that we can deliver impact to you, but we want to deliver impact on a global level. And that's what we're doing here. So, take a moment to like it, share it, rate it, review it. And make sure to come back each and every week. We drop new episodes on Thursday. And remember, you have the power to create success all on your terms. I'm Clara Capano, and I'll see you next time for more Women Winning Their Way.